Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Joree Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Joree is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Joree.
Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Joree Rose. I am so excited today to have on my love and my partner, Dr. John Schinnerer.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
So in my last episode, I talked about the what you seek is seeking you, and that I really feel that the intention setting and the writing that letter, the big joke is that I manifested John. And he literally checked everything on that list. So I joke that, he's just about 3.5 years old now, since I'm not sure he actually existed before that letter. Did you?
I'm only 3.5 years old.
So clearly you're not. And how did you get to the point in your life when we met?
Well, let's see. Post-divorce, I was dating, and it was fun for a while, and then I got tired of it and wanted to find a partner. And so what I did is I got really clear on the top 5 things that were must-haves for me, and thought a little bit about what I don't want in a partner. And the must-haves for me were things like emotional awareness, emotional balance, communication, integrity was a high one for me. And then, of course, to me, beauty and physical fitness. But as we've talked about before, I think those two are relatively easy to find. It's harder to find the other intangibles, the emotional awareness, the emotional balance, the communication, the integrity. Those are the big ones to me.
Yeah, those were super hard. So when we first met, I was blown away that I walked into that restaurant and you were sitting reading a book that I had just been reading about the night before. What even made you do that?
Well, I'd been approached by a matchmaker who I went out on a couple dates that they set me up on, and the way that we would connect was by having a certain book. And so I just got in the habit of bringing books with me. And I also thought if I meet someone that's my true match, they will love the fact that I have a book with me, that they will be a reader too. And even better, if the book is a match for them, if there's a shared interest, that would be even better.
And if I happened to be a few minutes late, you would have gotten caught up on your reading, because I'm always a few minutes late.
Exactly. I was prepared on different layers.
So that first lunch, we had so much in common. I mean, I remember walking away feeling like it was a volleyball game of the ball being thrown back into each other's courts of, oh my God, wait, you know who Dan Millman is? You know who Jon Kabat-Zinn is? You know what mindfulness is? And the irony, not only did we have all those things in common, but we literally lived like 5 minutes from each other. I mean, it was kind of crazy to think we had gone all this time. And I had wondered, had our paths crossed before? And yet, why were we meeting now? And I think it's because we were both ready.
Yeah. I remember the excitement that I felt during that first meeting. And the excitement at that time was, wow, here's someone that matches me intellectually and vocationally. And at that first time, we just talked about professional interests.
It was just work stuff, yeah. We never even got to personal, like, who are you outside of these things?
And then I was so excited to meet again, and I think we met the next morning for coffee.
Yeah, you showed up in a suit. He really tried to impress me.
Impress you. I wanted to look good.
It worked.
and then we
he does not wear suits to work.
I don't wear suits at all if I can help it. But then we got into more personal stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I couldn't wait to see you a third time.
Yeah, so the third time is an ongoing joke that I will let all of you listeners in on, was he took me out for drinks. Not for dinner. I never got bought dinner. Well, I have since. But that was the big joke. We had lunch and then coffee and then drinks.
I've been buying dinner for years to repay her for that night.
But it was, I remember when we went out for drinks, not dinner. And really, I remember sitting there asking you what you were wanting in a partner. Mm-hmm. And I remember you saying the emotional awareness and the integrity, and I think I dived right in of what's gone on in your life to make you want those things so bad. I think I am still a therapist.
Yeah, it's difficult dating a therapist.
My therapist always told me I should date a therapist, and apparently John was told the same thing. So.
Well, that was a conclusion I came to on my own.
Yeah.
Just that maybe I need to date someone in the field, because other women that I had dated prior, they would go to this place of insecurity and they would be like, "Are you analyzing me right now?" And my response internally was, "Well, I wasn't.
But I am. So I will speak for myself that I never went out with anyone else. Like I had this sense of, oh my God, this is someone I felt like different than any other guy I'd ever met. And I was kind of amazed, and we grew pretty close pretty quickly.
Yeah. I was dating other people at the time because that was kind of my defense against getting too close too fast with people. And as soon as I met you, I kind of shut everything else down.
Well, yeah, I remember a couple weeks and you looked at me and you said, "Damn you ruined dating for me."
Yeah, you screwed it up.
I screwed up his dating. So, good problems to have. And, it was only 2 months after that I went to Costa Rica on that first retreat.
I remember.
And, prior to even meeting John, I was being really pulled and drawn to go to Costa Rica. And I was like, I don't know why I'm being so drawn there. And part of it was the previous experience I'd had with Dan Millman. Part of it was being told I couldn't go when I was married. So it was a sense of independence and making my own decisions. But there was somewhere in the back of my head of maybe I'm supposed to meet my person there. And I kind of felt like dating when we first met was like, oh, what if this screws up who am I supposed to meet in Costa Rica? And the irony was, it was when I was in Costa Rica that I realized, shit, I'm kind of falling for this guy really hard. And it was when I was in Costa Rica that I really discovered my person, which was you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you FaceTimed me while you were there, and I was surprised that you were FaceTiming me.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to be self-protective.
And yeah.
I was trying to be guarded.
It didn't work so well. No, that hasn't worked well for us. So, part of the reason that is so fun for being in a relationship with John is the layers and layers of similar interests and ways of being, wanting to grow together, wanting to grow individually, but also this shared vision of our work together. So it's really exciting to me that, we're starting off here with what is going to be the first of many podcast episodes, in addition to not only on Journey Forward, but John has just started his podcast, which I'm super excited about. So maybe share, just for a moment, self-promote, what is the work you're doing right now? Because this is part of my attraction to John. And part of what turns me on so many levels and layers is the work he's doing in the world. So, share.
Yeah, so I just started a podcast called The Evolved Caveman. And the goal of it is to help men evolve. I realized a while back that I was being an executive coach, and I was helping men who had amassed quite a bit of money. And they had done everything right in life. They'd gone to the right college, they'd gotten good grades, they'd married, they had had kids, and they weren't happy. And it dawned on me that in order to be truly happy, and I think we're all shooting for happiness in some way, that you've got to have success and happiness at work and at home. And many of the men I was working with were miserable at home. They didn't want to go home. They would spend more time at the office. They would kind of hide behind golf and other activities. And they would come home and they would be uncertain. There would be doubt. There was doubt. They didn't know how to communicate with their wives or their teenage children. And that kind of pushed me from executive coaching into more work about relationship, communication skills, and more recently, this work into masculinity, which has just been fascinating. And so I've been having conversations with people like Jed Diamond, people like Mark Green, Faith Harper, and it's been fascinating to look at how are men socialized, and what impact does that have on our relationships in the here and now? So that's kind of what I've been working on. Yeah,
it's been real amazing work, and I have such pride of being with a partner who has such interest in that level of work. And as you said, men often haven't been socialized to be in a relationship. And, here, John and I are, he's a psychologist. I'm a marriage and my therapist, and we're in relationship, and we're both doing this work. And we actually, our private practices are just blocks from each other, and we share joint clients of him working with the men and me with the women. And it sometimes would be easy to assume that we never get stuck. And yet
we get stuck?
Apparently we do. And, but I think it goes back to one of the early things that when we first met. So I was always told that I was high maintenance. And from being in a relationship from a super young age, I was told I was high maintenance and I was too much. So I really believed that. And I remember very early on in meeting John, telling him, hey, just so you know, by the way, apparently I'm like really needy. And I was blown away at his response. And he looked at me, he's like, what? You're not needy. And I said, no, apparently I am. I've been told that. And he literally I calmed those fears in me that I was always believing by saying, no, you're not needy. And it was in that moment I realized it's not needy when you're with someone whose needs match your own. And, so John and I both are highly sensitive at times. We're both emotionally aware. So to what others came across as a problem to be with or too challenging, for us, it finally felt like a match in that emotional awareness.
Yeah, and I had a similar experience. I remember I was over at your house. We'd been going out, I think, about 3 months. And I think
it was before the I Love You came out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I remember I was in just a grouchy mood. Like, I was stressed, I was tired, I was irritable. I just was out of sorts. And I got up to leave for the night to go back to my place. And at the doorway, I turned and said to you, hey, look, I'm sorry that I was in a bad mood. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just kind of stressed and tired. And I'll never forget, you looked at me and you said, hey, my job is to accept all of you. And my jaw, I had to pick up my jaw from the floor because that was revolutionary for me. No one had ever told me that before. And it had been a problem in relationships in the past because other people would take on my emotions too much. So that was a night where I think I fell a little bit more in love with you.
Yeah. And it continues to, those two things I think continue to show up in our relationship. Our needs actually match. And so none of us feel pathologized in our needs. And our needs are what I consider human needs. Mm-hmm. We want time, we want attention, we want affection, we want love, we want communication. And not everyone is up for that level of game in relationship.
When you mentioned that we get stuck, and I think we have gotten stuck a few times, and when we do get stuck, the underlying motivation there is typically one of us wants more time with the other one.
Yeah. When I stop traveling, we'll have more time. You can't see the look he's giving on his face right now if it were video. But, speaking of traveling, this actually became a huge connection point for John and I because when I was in Costa Rica, that 2 months into our relationship, and I had mentioned, just traveling alone was overcoming so many fears for me. And it was from that trip that I got the travel bug. So mind you, we're only together for 2 months. I come home. In my head, I've fallen in love with this guy, and I'm not going to tell him that because I'll be damned if I was the first one to say it because I was afraid of coming across as too needy. But what I did do is when I got home from that trip, is I said to him, I have the travel bug. And this was in February. And I said, I have 2 weeks this summer that my kids are both going to be away at sleepaway camp. And I want to go travel somewhere in the world. And I want you to come with me. Now, let me preface this by saying, as much as John was excited about our relationship, he was also self-protective and being cautious, saying early on, I don't think we're going to last past 6 months because my relationships don't last past 6 months. And I'm like, well, I'm a little competitive, so I'm going to challenge you on that. So the trip I was proposing was outside that 6-month window. So I was entering into unknown territory for him.
Yeah. And so my response internally and externally was, oh, shit. Are you serious? I was like, how about if we try a smaller trip, a lesser trip before then?
Because I was thinking Thailand is where I really wanted to go. And we actually had already had a professional conference that we were going to go to together the following month in March. So he looked like deer caught in the headlights. I realized, oh shit, I've really scared this guy off. Like I just shot it all down. And when he responded by saying, let's think about Chicago and then we can talk about the summer. And I said, okay, fine. And I was smart enough to not bring up anything again until after Chicago.
Yeah, and Chicago went amazingly well. It was fun. I realized you were easy to travel with.
And we laughed a ton.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I think we let more of our guard down.
Completely. Yeah, and there was a moment, if any of you guys have seen Say Anything, where Lloyd Dobler pushes the glass out of the way of the sidewalk for Diane to walk around. John did an exact moment of that for me, walking down the street in Chicago, where there was glass. And he literally pushed it right, and I thought, oh my God, he's like Lloyd Dobler.
and then there was another moment where we were flying home, and we were sitting side by side, and I think you plugged your earphones in and started watching a movie, and I started watching a movie.
I was trying not to throw up from being hungover from being out the night before, having too much fun at the jazz clubs.
Well, yeah,
the music club, Kingston Mines.
Kingston Mines, place was awesome.
Going to live music was something that I'd never done before.
Yeah. Point. So anyway, we're on the plane and we disconnect for about 2 hours, where we're just kind of both in our own world watching movies, and as the plane kind of nears San Francisco, we pull out our headphones and I turned to Joree and I just looked her in the eye and said, I missed you.
I was blown away. It's like I was right here. I didn't go anywhere. And we were just not paying attention to one another. And so, our needs matched in that we really just wanted time and attention with one another. And it kind of became the ongoing joke of any time John would express his emotions to me. It could be even something as simple as I'm hungry or I'm tired. The idea that a man could name and then communicate needs or emotions was such a huge turn on. So then it became like this ongoing joke of, naming a simple need and be like, are you excited?
Hey, sweetheart, I'm happy right now.
And I'm so excited right now. Okay, TMI right now. So to further on of how our relationship evolved, Chicago went amazing. I told John I accepted all of him. Ultimately, he was the one to say, I love you first, thank God, because then I didn't come across too needy. But I did. I was head over heels. And I literally got butterflies before seeing you, I would say a good year and a half. I mean, that's a long time for butterflies to last. And I don't think we would go much more a day or two without seeing each other. And, this was at a time where both of us were still fairly new to post-divorce dating with kids. And both having kids, the first 6 months was no kid introduction, really just keeping the relationship just to ourselves. And I actually think my custodial weekends changed. So even within that 6 months, there was not a lot of available time. And I'll never forget also within that 6-month period, I had a really challenging month of a medical procedure and a surgery. And I was taking my final exam for my licensing and I started construction on a pool. Like there was a lot going on. And I never before had felt so nurtured and taken care of. And I remember early on in the month, you telling me, we'll get through this. And, as you guys will start to hear more about John and I, and as we share more of our relationship, we're pretty open with a lot of things. And, I think it serves to be open and vulnerable in sharing it, because I think it can role model to others how to be open and vulnerable in a relationship.
Yeah, and if we can't share about it, who can?
Right. And what I'm going to say is that whole month of April, we couldn't have sex based on a medical procedure. And I thought, oh my God, here's this brand new relationship. We're dating 4 months. Now we can't have sex for a month. And the whole we'll get through this was something I never quite experienced before, because it was so early on and we were already a we. And especially early in relationship, when sex is such a high priority and such a high frequency thing, we found so many other ways to deeply connect. And it was so beautiful to feel that so early in a relationship. I just felt like, wow, what a test, because I'd had the experience in my marriage where when life got hard, there was disconnect. And here was an example of life got hard and it brought us more connected. Mm-hmm. So I thought, oh man, this guy's a good catch. I'm glad all the other women couldn't keep him like I somehow was able to.
I was too needy.
Apparently you were too needy. So we ultimately decided to go to Thailand, mm-hmm. which was something so out of both of our comfort zones. And we figured if we can still stay connected with the amount John sweats in that humidity.
It's just me now?
Well, a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh. True. But, that trip we've described as being like a honeymoon without getting married.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, being able to play with elephants, a baby elephant. And then, so we went to Bangkok, we went to Koh Samui, went to Chiang Mai, but wound up in Koh Samui on the beach. So
this is like an epic story of more synchronicities. I've shared so many stories and experiences of synchronicities that this is, I think, both personally and professionally and relationally where it culminates in so much. So at this point, I had a logo for my business that I'd already had for a couple of years. And because you're listening to my podcast, you've seen the logo. It's a spiral. And it is a Thai symbol that I didn't actually know, but it's called an unalome. And it's a Thai symbol that represents a practice of mindfulness, that the spiral at the bottom represents where you get stuck, where you get caught, where you get hooked, where you get triggered, where you just kind of spin. It's that hamster wheel of life where you just keep running in circles and not seem to get out. But there is a way out, and it's not a straight line. There's lots and twists and turns, and at the top, it becomes more of a straight line. So the symbol represents the path to peace or the path to enlightenment, to getting unstuck. And I've always been drawn to symbols and of spirals, rather. I've always been drawn to the symbol of spirals. Something about it is very appealing to me. So it really fit as a business logo. And I had always sworn I would never get a tattoo. But I told myself if I ever did, that would be the symbol of what I would get. So we've had this amazing epic trip in Bangkok, up in Chiang Mai with the elephants. We're now down in Koh Samui. And part of the trip, I had told myself, look for the symbol because supposedly it was on the front of Thai temples.
Mm-hmm. Buddhist temples, yeah, Thai Buddhist.
And I never looked. So we had an epic day in Koh Samui. And there was a restaurant directly on the beach that was the start of an epic day. And we decided the next day to go back to the same restaurant on the beach and actually spend time in the lounge chairs just outside the restaurant for the rest of the morning. So we go back the second day. This is towards the end of our trip. It had been blissful and amazing. Mm-hmm. And the owner of the restaurant was shoveling sand. Like literally the floor of the restaurant was sand because it was literally on the beach. And the guy was just wearing a bathing suit. And he was this beautiful Frenchman who looked like David Beckham and was covered head to toe in tattoos. Mm-hmm. And one of the set of tattoos was 3 lines of Thai written across, like from one corner of his collarbone around his chest to the other corner. And at the tip of each line of Thai was this unalome, was the spiral. And I was like, oh my God, John, I told myself to look for the spiral. I've forgotten to look. How unmindful of me not to notice and pay attention. And now here it is on this guy. So I asked him what it meant, and he confirmed it meant what I thought it always had meant. And he even pointed to the back of his neck where he had a bigger one, probably like 2 inches mm-hmm. on the back of his neck. So after the breakfast, John and I are sitting on the beach, and my mind is kind of spinning. And I turned to John and I said,
well, hold on. Before we get to that point, I remember there was a shell, a tiny little shell on the table between us.
Yes.
And I picked up the shell and we looked at the bottom of it, and there was a spiral on the bottom of the shell.
There was a perfect spiral. In fact, I still have that shell. It's sitting in my dish of all of my woo-woo crystals in my bedroom.
Yeah.
So I turned to John and I said, I think I want to get a tattoo. And, I thought he would do the obvious thing of talk me out of it. But he looked at me from the lounge chair and he goes, yeah, me too. And we sat there for a couple hours contemplating, was this the right choice? I mean, we'd been dating 7 months and we'd been on this epic vacation. I couldn't imagine anything going better in my life now that you were in it. And to get a tattoo.
To get matching tattoos.
Matching tattoos in Thailand. It just seemed like the craziest thing that made the most perfect sense.
Yeah, seemed a little risky.
And the irony was John actually had said, oh yeah, check out Metal Tattoo. Because the day before on our epic adventure, we happened to pass a tattoo parlor that he happened to make note of and remember the name of. So we sat on the beach and we said, will we regret it more if we get it or if we don't get it?
We felt if we came home and got a tattoo, it was a little bit of a cop-out.
Yeah.
Not quite the same in terms of the story and the epicness of it.
And the meaning. So we go and we call Metal Tattoo, made appointments for like 6:30 that night, went back to the hotel, did a couple shots of tequila, and went to the tattoo parlor and got matching tattoos. And I'll never forget, John went first because I had to change where I was going to put it on my body. So he went first. And I'll never forget, he sat in the chair and he looked at me. Do you remember what you said? What'd you say?
I said, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this with you.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it was. And I thought, holy shit, this is like so much more permanent than a wedding ring. And we weren't even talking about it in those terms. But it was this idea that I was on this spiritual journey. And John's reasoning for wanting to get the matching one was, he's also been on a spiritual journey for 20 years. And, whether we were together or apart, it was our hope that we would always be on that path, ideally together. And I believe always will be together. But that this symbol could mean enough to us individually and as a couple that whenever we're stuck, there's a way out.
Well, and also I think that there's a connection between us with those tattoos.
It's
I think when
huge.
things get rough and we do get stuck, we can kind of go back to the tattoos to remind us and ground us, hey, this is why we're together.
Yeah. And we have no choice but to get unstuck because there's no better partner for me. And,
the kids would kill us.
Oh, the kids would kill us. And that's a whole other story. I think we've done an amazing job of integrating our children post-divorce dating with kids, which we will talk about because I think people need to know how to do that mindfully and with awareness and with compassion for all parties involved. But, there have been times where we could just be lying there and I can just rub my fingers over your tattoo or I see it and it's a connection. And, if there have been times where we've been stuck and I thought, oh, God, what if this is relationship threatening? One of the parts that I go to in my head is, how would either one of us ever explain this tattoo to another person without thinking, oh, I fucked that up. I need to go back to that relationship. That just wouldn't work.
Well, we always tease that, you've ruined me for any other relationship.
Yeah. I'm so glad I have.
Oh, well.
My intentions worked. Woohoo! So, it's really exciting to share our story. And, there's layers to it. And part of the reason that I think we're so excited to do work together with couples is because a lot of these layers, I think we think are teachable. Okay, so maybe you're not wired naturally to be more emotionally aware or communicative or to hear your partner or understand them. But I think a lot of this people expect to happen by chance. And I'm pretty excited that we get to do the work to teach it.
Yeah, these are skills. They're tools. They're things that you get better at with practice. I didn't come from a family that would have prepared me easily for emotional awareness.
And yet it created a need for you to want to have more emotional awareness. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're all just muscles that you can exercise and get stronger.
Yeah. And I think, John and I aren't perfect. I think what is perfect about us, though, is that we never give up trying. And we also, when we are stuck, we're really, I think, pretty good of naming it and using that awareness to say, okay, so I'm stuck. Let me have compassion for either one of us of whatever's going on and work our way out.
Well, and then I think we're also good after that fact of circling back around to it and kind of debriefing, talking about it, figuring out what are the patterns and how can we prevent it from happening again, which doesn't always work, but it sure ensures a good probability of success and future improvement.
Well, and I think for me, I never hold resentment because that circling back truly allows me to let it go.
Yeah. Well, and helps me understand too.
Yeah.
You and me.
For how to do it different next time, maybe in a more skillful way. So if you were, as we kind of sum up this episode and, kind of bring it back full circle of some of the things that if maybe people are out there now who are dating and who aren't sure what they want, but they know what they don't want, maybe we can each give a tip of something that, maybe the listeners could learn something from.
Yeah, I think my tip would be to get really clear on what is it you're looking for in a potential partner and have a list of maybe 5 things that these are your must-haves in a relationship. And then I would also look at what are your deal killers. So have a list of maybe 3, 4, 5 things that, I don't want someone that wants to have kids. I don't want someone that's, shorter than 5 feet or over 7 feet tall. But, on the other hand...
That's a really arbitrary one. I'm glad I just made that cut off.
Good thing you wear heels. But the other thing I see is I've talked to a lot of women who are in the dating world looking for the perfect man, and they've got a list of 20 or 25 must-have items. On the other side, I don't think that's very realistic. I think you got to figure out what are your priorities? What are the things that are really important to you? What are the things that will ensure success and happiness in a relationship? And to me, a lot of it comes down to emotional awareness, ability or willingness to grow in the relationship. Integrity is a big one. Honesty, and just the willingness to communicate and talk about issues as they come up, because no relationship is perfect and everyone's going to have issues. So, to have this idealized version of I'm waiting for my prince to come and he's going to be perfect and we're never going to have any conflict just doesn't hold any water.
We're all still human. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are great tips. And, for me, I think it was so much a matter of believing in my worth. Mm-hmm. And I had to go on my journey, which all those synchronicities of the universe kept guiding me towards. I think the main message was for me to tune into me and trust me. That if I was looking for a partner to complete me or to give me the things that I'd never had, it would be harder for me to receive if I hadn't learned to honor myself.
Yeah, I think learning to stand on your own before you look to get in a relationship is a good way to go.
And that's really what I did for 10 whole days, from from writing the letter to finding you on Tinder.
And I am so proud of you.
That was a solid 10 days. I did it. I totally did it. No dating, no dating apps. I was fully on my own. I was so ready for you. But I was at the point where I wasn't searching, and that shift of it'll happen when it's meant to happen, and it'll happen when I'm ready for it because I'm okay in myself no matter what.
Yeah, and I think that there's a big point there in terms of being comfortable being alone. That, we've seen a lot of people that are desperate in their need to find someone, the clock's ticking or my looks are fading.
I'd rather be with someone than be alone. Right. And yet that person continues to bring them unhappiness, dissatisfaction, insecurities, and multiple challenges.
Yeah,
but at least they're not alone.
That desperation really screws things up. I think it gets us into bad relationships, creates bad selection or bad choices for us. And so I think the more that you can be aware of and kind of manage that anxiety and that desperation and become calm with yourself and be at peace with the idea that even if you are alone, that would be okay too.
Right. Yeah, I remember when we first started dating, I said to you, not to you, I said to myself, I was going to play this little game. And I'm not talking like dating game playing bullshit, but more of if I saw it as a more lighthearted way of being, which you have your own phrase, which I would like for you to share in a minute about dating. But for me, it was, let me just see what happens if I actually say how I feel. Because I was so afraid of speaking up for not being received or being rejected for what I interpreted as my needs. Mm-hmm. And so it was like a little, again, I wasn't playing games with you. It was more of, let me just play this game in my own head around, let me just see what happens if. And it allowed me to have less of an attachment to the outcome and more of an ability to be honest with myself and what my needs actually were. And I found that when I said how I felt or what I needed. And one of the phrases I use is hold my sacred ground. When I was able to do that, I felt more empowered. And I think I also showed up as less needy or less desperate because I had a sense of self and I was willing to communicate that without the fear of rejection. Because honestly, if he rejected me for being me, then he wasn't the right partner for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I talk about it with clients as radical honesty or radical transparency. Because I got to the point in my dating where I didn't want to screw around. I didn't want to waste my time and their time. And so what I would do is I would just put some of my baggage out there up front. Like, here's kind of the good stuff. Here's kind of the bad stuff. If you're okay with that, all right, cool, let's keep talking. If you're not okay with it, that's fine too. Like, we've just saved each other time in terms of selecting someone out of the pool.
Right. I used to, on first dates, purposefully either make sure my phone was out or purposefully pull my phone out for calling to say goodnight to my kids. Because I don't have one of those arrangements where when my daughters are at their dad's, I still talk to them every night. And it was like a little test of the person I was out with of if they were offended or pissed that I would call and say goodnight to my kids while out on a date, then that wasn't the right person for me. So sometimes these little tests are a good way of narrowing down, could this be a potential match for me? But one of the things that I think John has taught a lot of his clients is this whole idea of care less.
That's where you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I realized when I was dating was that I was getting too attached too quickly to a couple of the women that I dated, and it wasn't serving me. And so I'll talk to clients
about... Were you needy?
I wouldn't call it that, but maybe. So if you think of empathy on a 1 to 10 scale, empathy being, the skill or the trait of feeling what other people feel, then if you think of it on a 1 to 10 scale, the psychopaths and sociopaths are like at a 1. They don't feel anything that we feel. I was at a 10 or a 9. And so I needed to find a way to dial that back to, say, a 6 or a 7, which would serve me better. I'd still feel what they were feeling, just not as much. And so one of the phrases that I would say and repeat in my head frequently as a mantra was care less, as a way to remind myself to bring down that empathy.
Well, and to not dive in too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's a mistake many people make where they dive in so fast and they haven't gone through their checklist. They haven't gone through is this the right partner for me?
Yeah, and I think that, one of the terms that for that euphoria and that lust and that passion that you feel when you first start dating someone that you like, it's called limerence. And I think that limerence kind of just blows out a lot of the logical thinking that we have and makes it hard to put the brakes on, to look at the relationship objectively, to have some distance from it. And so any tools that you can put into play to kind of slow you down is probably a pretty good idea. I'm
glad you didn't care less about me, though.
I tried. It didn't work.
Clearly.
I was telling myself that.
Well, I manifested you, so you were in it no matter what.
Well, and that allowed me to say, well, let's do Chicago first, and then we'll do Thailand.
And here we are with matching tattoos.
That was my caring less.
Yeah, and here we are with matching tattoos. Yeah. So,
mm-hmm.
It's worked well in our favor. It has been so much fun having you on, and there's going to be plenty of more episodes of the two of us because, part of the growth that John and I are doing individually is actually to grow together in our work and as a couple. And we're actually leading our couples retreat in Costa Rica in the spring, which is going to be so much fun. And part of what we want to bring to our work is how real we are. I think that's such a gift that we can offer to others is not only is this where we're trained, not only is this what we've been, doing for our careers and have education around, but here's how it looks in practice. Because I think so much relationship tools are conceptual. And I really want to bring a level of honesty and transparency to, here's how those difficult conversations go. Here's where we've gotten stuck, and let us tell you how we've gotten out of it. And we're still human.
Yeah, and here's where we still struggle.
Yeah, we're still human, damn it.
Yeah, pisses me off, but it's true.
I wouldn't have it any other way. I love you.
I love you too, baby.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. And you can check out John and his Evolved Caveman podcast, and there'll be links in the show notes. And this is just the very beginning of hearing a lot more from both of us. Take care. Bye-bye.
To continue your journey forward, find Joree Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joreerose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.